Thursday afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Electric Bilodeau as we go through everything going on here in the Lowcountry right now. All kinds of stuff going on. Bunch of concerts coming into the Lowcountry over the next couple of weeks. Really feels like this is the most we've seen in the area since before the pandemic, which is just great news because we're getting a lot of great acts. Of course, we had Elton John here in town a couple weeks ago, which was an amazing show. Coming up October 2nd over at the Poorhouse. That is a Sunday night. Bluegrass star Sierra Hull is going to be playing her first headlining gig here in Charleston. She was nice enough to sit down with me earlier this week, talk about what she can expect when she comes back to the Lowcountry, what she's looking forward to, and everything else. Here's Sierra Hull. Sierra Hull joining me here on Electric Bilodeau this afternoon. She's got a show coming up at the Poorhouse over on James Island coming up on October 2nd. And Sierra, I was looking at your tour schedule, and these next couple of weeks are insane. Like, this is a monster tour. You're doing, I think, like 17 shows over the course of 20 days, which one leads me to ask, are you some kind of machine? And two, like, how are you going to cram all these shows into such a short time period?
I mean, so goes that glamorous musician life, you know? It's like we're out here getting after it. But no, it's been a busy year. But I'm excited for this tour in particular because there's something kind of really fun when you can kind of squeeze a lot of shows and touring into a compact amount of time. I feel like it allows you to kind of get in a groove that's different. And we've been popping all over summer festivals, playing, you know, all over the country this year, a lot of flying back and forth. So on this one, we kind of just get to hole up on a bus together for a few weeks and you know, like, we're going down the road this morning rehearsing, working on something. So we're kind of all together, and, you know, by the end of it, we'll probably be like, okay, don't talk to me for 2 weeks. But no, there's something really special about that, I think, being able to kind of get in a groove with the people you're making music with and sort of, you know, get to hang out. And it's just a lot of fun when you get to kind of do a stretch of dates like this. So it's tiresome, but there's a lot of reward in doing it, too.
And that time period's got to be tough, too, because, you know, any little thing goes off the rails and you're going to be late for a show or you're late to get to the next town. So it's got to be some pressure, too.
Oh, man, you know, funny story. I was just on tour with Bela Fleck for 2 weeks right before this, and we had really – this is kind of the main stretch of dates that we're kicking off tonight, but we're in Philly. But before that, I was out with Bela, and we had a festival called Bourbon and Beyond this past weekend. We had a Sunday set there, and I played in Kansas with Bela on Saturday night, and I literally hopped off his bus, got picked up in Kentucky with my people, and the show the night before at the festival, we didn't even get off stage till 1:30 in the morning because things got behind. So by the time the bus was rolling, I was going, oh my gosh, are we going to make it to our 4:15 set at this festival? And I think by the time I got there, just by like the streak of luck, you know, it was like 4:05, and by 4:15 we were on stage playing the show, and I was like, man. So it's rare that happens, but every now and then you got to be ready to boogie down.
But that's that glamorous lifestyle you're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
So when you're on the road, and especially when you're doing a tour like this, and everything's so compacted, do you have like a schedule that you like to follow, or do you like to get out and try to do things in the town you're in, or is it more just kind of stay on the bus and make sure you guys are rehearsing, or you know, what's your routine when you go to a town?
Well, I love, like, if I can wake up in a town, that's always exciting to me because usually, you know, get off the bus, go for a morning walk, enjoy just kind of being able to hang out for a minute wherever we are. I mean, it is true. Oftentimes you're sort of, you know, blinking and you're gone. So there's not always a lot of downtime. But yeah, I like to, as much as possible, be able to explore. I think that's part of like what keeps the touring element fun and kind of keeps you from going crazy a little bit, you know, because otherwise you're kind of stuck on the bus or you're stuck inside at a venue. And for me, I love being outside. I love being able to just go find a nice park or a nice coffee shop and grab a coffee, you know, like being able to just walk around and sort of, you know, see the places. And of course, Charleston. I mean, what's not to love about Charleston? There's so many great places to eat, and it's just such a beautiful town. So, yeah, I'm particularly excited when I see Charleston on the schedule. I'm like, yeah. And actually, I don't know if I've ever played my own show in Charleston before. I think this is going to be my first time playing Charleston, I believe.
That's what I was going to ask you. I know you played the Carolinas a lot. Have you had shows in Charleston before?
Yeah, I think we had one show that got canceled or something, like a couple years ago during kind of all the crazy stuff. So I'm excited. I can't wait because I've been to Charleston before, and maybe a couple times now, just either passing through or whatever. But this will be my first headline kind of show somewhere. So I'm excited.
We're excited too. I wanted to talk about kind of how you got to your start in this business because I was reading your website and it said, for 25 years you've been doing this, and then I start doing the math and I'm like, you're like 30, so
yeah, not like, 25.
Not 25, a little embellishment.
Well, my album's called 25 Trips, so maybe that's what you were reading. So 25 Trips Around the Sun. That I made this record when I was started writing this record when I was 25, and so. But no, I started playing when I was 8, so not too far off. I've been doing it a long time now. So
was it just your parents? Was it just your parents hand you a mandolin and said get to work, or was it something you kind of found that you liked doing?
Well, no, my parents just always loved music. I grew up hearing a lot of music in church, singing old hymns in rural Tennessee where I grew up, tiny little town. So music was always kind of around. It was part of the culture that I grew up in, but, nobody was trying to be on a stage. Like my mom had a natural singing voice and she could sing harmony. She always had an ear for music in that way. And I remember her at one point learning a few chords on the guitar, and my dad always was a lover of music. He bought a mandolin when I was probably about 7 or so and decided he wanted to learn to play. Right next door, my parents lived next to my great aunt and uncle, so they were kind of like a second set of grandparents to me, just right next door. And my great uncle named Junior would always be playing guitar or mandolin or fiddle, and he wasn't a virtuosic musician. I don't even know if he really knew how to play many chords on the mandolin, but he would play, tunes like Wildwood Flower or just old songs that kind of everybody knows. And he would always be, playing something on the fiddle. He played the real old timey fiddle where, he put the fiddle down here instead of under his chin, And so the idea of like music was always around, but it was really when my dad got a mandolin, he decided he wanted to learn a little bit, that he started going to some bluegrass festivals, buying bluegrass CDs, exposing us to the music. My older brother started learning to play a little bit, like some chords on the guitar, and I was just totally the annoying little sister who wanted to do everything he did, total follower. So I decided I wanted to learn to play something, and, once I first learned my first tune on the mandolin, it was just like, I don't know, something clicked in me. I knew immediately that's what I wanted to do with my life, and I've never questioned doing anything else. It's kind of like for better or for worse, this is the thing I love and the thing I'm most passionate about. So I always, had a real pull to it in that way.
You mentioned releasing your first album at 10 years old. I've got an 11-year-old who can't find his shoes on most days. I can't imagine, him being coordinated enough to put an album together. What was it like, recording an album and putting it out at 10 years old and then, going to 5th grade, the next week?
Yeah, well, I think at that point in time, I started playing when I was 8. 2 years in the span of a young person's life is pretty significant. It feels like a blur these days because time just passes so quickly the older we get. But when you're 8, it's like 2 years might as well be 20 kind of. And so I had this period of time where I was going to these local jams and getting to play with all these local musicians who were so kind and would welcome me into the, people sitting in the back of a community center in a circle jamming on the weekends, or I'd go to, the town I grew up in is like 900 people. It's so small. It's not like there was any huge acts coming anywhere in the area, but within a 30-minute drive, there were little bluegrass jams or smaller festivals. It might be a fall festival or just like a little, especially at that time, where you'd go somewhere and, in addition to the local bands playing on the stage, there'd be a shade tree with tons of people sitting around jamming all these kind of traditional songs and tunes. And, I don't think there was ever a time in my playing, even when I barely knew how to play 2 chords on the instrument, that I wasn't welcomed into those situations where those fellow musicians and bands didn't either say, hey, honey, come over here, you can pick with us, and welcome me into it. So I fell in love with the community as much as I did the music itself, I really think. And between that and my dad's love of the music and his desire to kind of help take me around, he would spend his last $5 sometimes. My parents didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, and so, he would spend his last $5 to take me to some jam down, 30 minutes from the house, and I'm just so grateful for that. So I definitely, it wasn't like, I just did it all on my own, that's for sure. I don't think I could have, found my place with being able to do it long term if I didn't have parents that were really supportive and tried to, help cultivate situations where I could grow and learn, and then also being so welcomed by, just my fellow local musicians at first.
Yeah, one of the things I love about country music is the community and how close the artists are with the fans, and it feels like Bluegrass kind of is even it's like a tight little circle within that circle. And
absolutely,
reading about you, how you got hooked up with Alison Krauss and Dan Tyminski early on in your career, that's they're enormous stars, in that area. Just to get hooked up with them at such a young age, that had to be just incredible for you.
Oh, man. Well, and particularly not just because they were, big stars in the field, but I fell in love with Allison's music when I was 9 years old. I'd been playing about a year. It was like every weekend we would go to the jam and we would get a new CD. We'd go, at that time, there's not many chain stores or anything like that around where I grew up anyway. So in this town, Jamestown, that my parents are originally from, not far from where I grew up, they had a Walmart. And at that time, you could go in and you could buy, they had a Bluegrass section. And it was like every week we'd get a new CD, we'd go to the jam, and we'd live with that CD for the entire week and, beyond. And it was like discovering all these new people. And I remember getting my first Allison album on one of those trips where we went in to, figure out what CD we're going to get this week. And so we got an album that Allison made called Forget About It, which is not a Bluegrass record, but my dad, was expecting a Bluegrass album, and it wasn't that, but I didn't care. It blew my mind. I thought it was like one of the greatest things I'd ever heard, and I thought, wow, now that is what I want to do. And so I kind of became obsessed. I mean, really, she was my biggest hero. I drew pictures of myself on stage with the band long before I met them, and it was my complete goal in life to get to meet her and maybe play with her someday. And the fact that it kind of happened so quickly, which, again, as a young person, it seemed like forever till I actually met her. But, within 2 years, I got to be on stage with her, and it was just like an unreal dream come true. And I'm just, very, very fortunate that things kind of worked out that way for me as a youngster.
Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, because you get to play with all kinds of people right now, and I saw a really cool collaboration you did recently with Chris Shiflett from the Foo Fighters as he's getting ready to do an Americana album. How did that kind of come together for you?
I had done some recording with a guy named Vance Powell, a great engineer in Nashville, and he's worked with, everybody from Chris Stapleton to Jack White. He's done a lot of Jack White projects, and so he's kind of got a lot of connections in a lot of different areas. And so when people decide they want to come to Nashville and make a record, he's kind of at the top of the list of who a lot of people want to work with. And so I think it was a combination of both Chris being a Bluegrass fan already, deciding he wanted to have mandolin on something, and my name got thrown out, and Vance said, I know Sierra, let's call her. And so I actually went in the studio and I ended up playing mandolin on a few tracks and singing some harmonies on the record. And so we first met that way, just from him, calling and saying, hey, can you come play on my record? And so then after that, he was doing a spot at the Grand Ole Opry just a few weeks back, and had said, hey, would you want to come play a couple of those songs that you were on the record? And then, so we just kind of met that way, and he's such a great dude. I mean, I hadn't met him before our session that we did last year, or maybe the year before. It'd been a while, but it was really fun. Like, what a nice guy. And of course, like the Foo Fighters, what an epic band. So it's cool to see Chris kind of, step outside that and do his own solo records and do something completely different too. And for him to say, hey, let's do a Jimmy Martin song, on the Opry. It's like, it's not what you would expect from a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, but it's pretty awesome.
That's so cool. Well, Sierra Hull coming to the Poorhouse on October 2nd over on James Island. We can't wait to see you, Sierra. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I can't wait. I'm so excited to be back in Charleston. It's going to be a blast.
All right. Thanks again to Sierra Hull for joining us on Electric Bilodeau. Once again, that show coming up at the Poorhouse on October 2nd. Tickets are still available right now. That's going to wrap it up for Electric Bilodeau this week. We'll see you back here coming up on Tuesday afternoon. Everyone have a great weekend.